The cramping started halfway through the quarterly review. Sharp, insistent pains that made me shift in my chair as I tried to focus on my laptop. 12 weeks pregnant and everything had been normal until now. The projection slides blurred as another wave of pain hit me, stronger this time. Something warm trickled between my legs. "Is there a problem, Autumn?" Ellery's voice cut through the air as she tapped her pen against her notepad. Her eyes narrowed, watching my every movement from across the table. "I need to step out for a moment," I managed, trying to keep my voice steady. "We present to Westland Manufacturing in exactly 83 minutes, Ellery replied, glancing at her watch. "They represent nearly half our annual revenue. This isn't the time for bathroom breaks." The cramping intensified. I felt more warmth spreading beneath me. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. "I'm having a medical emergency," I whispered, not wanting the others in the adjacent meeting room to hear. "I need to go to the hospital." Ellery's expression didn't change. "A medical emergency? You look fine to me." "I'm 12 weeks pregnant," I said, my voice breaking, "and I think I'm miscarrying." She studied me for a long moment, then looked pointedly at the presentation on my screen. "How long have you been working on this pitch, Autumn?" 6 weeks, I answered, confused by her response. The pain was getting worse. I needed to leave. 6 weeks of preparation for a $40 million account, and you're going to walk away minutes before the final review? I stared at her, unable to process what I was hearing. "I'm bleeding, Ellery. Bleeding isn't an excuse. Finish the presentation or you're fired." Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact. "Those are your options." I stood carefully, gathering my things with shaking hands. "I'll email you the final deck. If you walk out that door, don't bother," she said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "I'll have Tanner deliver it instead." I nodded and left anyway. The hospital confirmed what I already knew. The heartbeat was gone. Had been gone for days, they said. My body was just catching up to the reality. As they prepped me for the procedure, I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the presentation I'd built, examining every competitor weakness, every pricing structure, something bulletproof that would have secured my promotion. All gone now. The baby, the presentation, probably my job too. "Is there someone who can drive you home?" the nurse asked afterward. I nodded and called a rideshare instead. "Hey there. If you've made it this far in my story, I know it's intense. This is actually how it all began for me. The moment everything changed. If this resonates with you or you want to hear what happened next, hit like and subscribe. I never thought sharing this would help others, but your comments have shown me how many of us have faced similar situations. Now, let me tell you who I am and how this all unfolded. My name is Autumn, and before all this happened, I was the top sales strategist at Blair Industrial Solutions. I'd climbed from entry-level analyst to senior strategist in 4 years, the fastest rise in company history. Numbers were my specialty. I could look at a market segment and instantly spot patterns others missed. That talent had landed me the Westland account, our biggest client, representing 40% of our annual revenue. Ellery had been my manager for just 6 months. She'd transferred from our West Coast office with an impressive record, 11 years with the company, responsible for landing 3 major accounts. The executive team adored her. She was untouchable. From day one, something felt off about her. She took credit for my work in ways that were hard to prove. Small things at first, ideas I'd mention in meetings would reappear in her presentations to upper management. Then bigger things, strategy documents I'd created would be forwarded to executives with her name on them. I'd been planning to address it after securing the Westland renewal. With that win under my belt, I'd have leverage. Then I discovered I was pregnant. My husband Julian and I had been trying for 2 years. We'd suffered through negative tests month after month. When the 2 lines finally appeared, we were cautiously elated. We told no one, not even our parents. 12 weeks, the doctor said. Get through 12 weeks before sharing the news. I kept it from everyone at work, taking my prenatal vitamins in bathroom stalls, scheduling doctor appointments during lunch breaks. Morning sickness hit me hard, but I hid it, ducking into restrooms between meetings, keeping crackers in my desk drawer. Ellery noticed anyway. "You're distracted lately," she told me 2 weeks before the Westland presentation. "I need you focused. This account is everything." "I'm handling it," I assured her, and I was. The presentation was nearly perfect. I'd analyzed Westland's manufacturing challenges, identified cost-saving opportunities they hadn't recognized themselves, and structured a proposal that would increase our services while providing them better value. Then came that day in the meeting room. The cramping, the blood, the impossible choice she presented me with. The days after the miscarriage passed in a blur, physical pain mixed with grief I couldn't process. Julian wanted me to rest, to take time off work. "They can't treat you this way," he kept saying. "It's illegal. It's inhumane." But I knew better. Ellery would spin it. She'd say I never mentioned the pregnancy, that I abandoned a critical presentation without explanation. It would be her word against mine, and she had 11 years of political capital I couldn't match. On the third morning, I woke up with startling clarity. The grief was still there, a hollow ache beneath my ribs, but something else had emerged alongside it. A cold, precise anger that focused my thoughts like nothing I'd ever experienced. I called the office. "Blair Industrial Solutions. How may I direct your call?" The receptionist's voice was cheerful. "This is Autumn Taylor. I need to speak with Human Resources." "One moment, please." There was a pause, then, "HR, this is Nadine." "Hi, Nadine. I'm calling to request access to my work accounts. I'm working remotely today. Let me check your status." "Yes, you're approved for remote work. I'll send a verification code to your phone." I thanked her and hung up. Ellery hadn't fired me, at least not officially. Perhaps she was waiting for me to quit, to break down, to disappear quietly. She didn't know me at all. Within 10 minutes, I was logged into the system. My hands hovered over the keyboard as I considered my next move. What I was about to do wasn't about revenge. Not entirely. It was about justice, about consequences, about making sure what happened to me wouldn't happen to someone else. I opened the company database and began searching through project archives. Every account Ellery had ever managed, every client interaction, every email chain she'd been part of. I didn't know what I was looking for yet, but something told me it was there. People who behave monstrously in plain sight often leave trails of smaller cruelties behind them. 3 hours later, I found it. A thread of emails from 8 years ago, buried deep in the archive of a client account Ellery had managed before being promoted. Messages between her and a client representative that made my blood run cold. As I scrolled through the emails, my breath caught in my throat. The messages between Ellery and a procurement director named Kieran at Maxfield Industries were friendly at first. Casual check-ins, congratulations on deals closed. Then, they changed. "Here's what the competition is submitting tomorrow," Ellery had written, attaching a detailed breakdown of pricing from 3 other companies bidding on the same contract. "Make sure your team comes in 2% lower than Hartwell's bid. I've highlighted the services where you can trim to make it work." Kieran's response, "You're a lifesaver. When I make VP next year, there's a director position waiting for you." I kept digging. This wasn't a one-time occurrence. Over the course of 18 months, Ellery had fed Kieran insider information on at least 7 different proposals. She'd undermined her own company, sabotaged her colleagues' work, all for the promise of a better position elsewhere. Kieran never became VP. I found an industry news article showing he'd been terminated from a different company for ethics violations. But Ellery had stayed at Blair, rising through the ranks, building her reputation on deals she'd rigged from the start. My hands trembled as I searched deeper. This pattern extended beyond Maxfield Industries. I found similar communications with contacts at 3 other client companies, nothing quite as explicit, but clear enough when you knew what to look for. Ellery had been playing both sides for years. I created a secure folder and began methodically saving everything. Emails, calendar invites showing meetings that weren't in the official client logs, proposal versions with inexplicable last-minute changes to pricing structures. Julian came in with tea around noon. "How are you feeling?" I looked up from my laptop. "I found something." He sat beside me, his hand warm against my back as I showed him what I'd discovered. "This is serious," he said, scrolling through the evidence. "What are you planning to do?" "I don't know yet." But that wasn't true. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. I just needed to be smart about it. "Autumn," Julian said carefully, "I know you're hurting. We both are. But this needs to be handled carefully. She has connections in the industry. If you go after her without enough proof..." "I'm not going to confront her directly," I said. "That's what she'd expect. She thinks I'm weak, broken. That gives me an advantage." Julian studied my face. "You're going back to work?" "Tomorrow." I closed my laptop. "And I'm going to act like nothing happened." The next morning, I dressed carefully. Charcoal pantsuit, minimal makeup, hair pulled back, professional, composed. I drove to the office with a strange calm settling over me. The grief was still there, a physical weight in my chest, but it had transformed into something focused, something with purpose. Ellery was in her office when I arrived. I could see her through the glass walls, on the phone, laughing. She spotted me walking past and froze mid-sentence. I didn't stop, didn't acknowledge her. Instead, I went straight to my desk and began working. 20 minutes later, her shadow fell across my keyboard. "You're back." Her voice was neutral, giving nothing away. I looked up. "I am." The Westland presentation went well. Tanner did a good job stepping in. I nodded. "That's good to hear." She studied me, searching for cracks, for the emotional breakdown she expected. "There's a staff meeting at 10. I'd like you to bring the Northvale numbers." "I'll have them ready." Something flickered across her face. Confusion, maybe even disappointment at my calm demeanor. She turned to leave, then paused. "I hope your situation has resolved itself." The cruelty of those words should have cut me open. Instead, they strengthened my resolve. "It has," I said, meeting her gaze. "Everything is very clear now." For the next 3 days, I played the part of the dutiful employee. I attended meetings, completed assignments, engaged in small talk with colleagues, all while systematically building my case file after hours. The evidence against Ellery wasn't just damaging, it was potentially criminal. She hadn't just violated company ethics policies, she'd compromised competitive bidding processes, potentially running afoul of antitrust regulations. On Wednesday morning, I requested a meeting with Camille, our legal counsel. "What's this regarding?" her assistant asked when I called. "A compliance concern I've identified while reviewing historical client accounts." The appointment was set for 2 o'clock. I spent the intervening hours organizing my findings, creating a timeline that showed the pattern of behavior. At 1:55, I gathered my materials and headed to the legal department. Camille was waiting in her office, expression curious. "Autumn, right? From sales strategy?" "Yes." I closed the door behind me. "Thank you for meeting with me. Your message mentioned a compliance concern?" I placed my tablet on her desk and pulled up the first set of emails. I discovered these while researching competitive positioning for the Northvale project. I believe they constitute a serious breach of company policy, possibly worse. Camille's expression changed as she read, her professional composure giving way to alarm. "How did you find these?" "They were in the archived server. I was looking for historical pricing patterns and found something unexpected." She looked up sharply. "Does Ellery know you're here?" "No, and I'd prefer to keep it that way until you've reviewed everything." "Everything? There's more?" I nodded, navigating to the full folder. "Much more. 8 years worth. Multiple clients." Camille skimmed through several documents, her face paling. She reached for her phone. "I need to call Warren. Our general counsel needs to see this immediately." 30 minutes later, I sat across from Warren, Camille, and 2 members of the audit committee as they reviewed the evidence I'd compiled. The room was silent except for the occasional sharp intake of breath as they discovered particularly damning exchanges. "How long have you known about this?" Warren asked finally. "I found the first emails 3 days ago. I've been verifying and documenting since then." "And what prompted you to look into these old accounts?" The question I'd been dreading. I could lie, say it was purely professional curiosity, but that would weaken my position if the truth emerged later. "I had a personal conflict with Ellery last week," I said carefully. It led me to question her professional ethics, so I started researching. Warren's eyes narrowed. "What kind of conflict?" I took a deep breath. I was experiencing a medical emergency during a client preparation meeting. Ellery refused to allow me to seek treatment and threatened my job if I left. "What kind of medical emergency?" Camille asked. The room felt suddenly too small, too warm. "I was having a miscarriage." Silence fell again, heavier this time. "Did you report this to HR?" Warren's voice had softened. "No, I was concerned it would be my word against hers, and she has significant influence within the company." The audit committee members exchanged glances. "We'll need to address both issues," one of them said. "The potential ethics violations take priority given the legal exposure, but the personal matter is serious as well." Warren nodded. "The board needs to be informed immediately. I'm calling an emergency meeting for tomorrow morning." "What happens until then?" I asked. "Say nothing to anyone," Camille advised. "Continue with your normal work. We'll handle this at the highest level." I left the meeting feeling strangely hollow. I'd set something in motion that couldn't be stopped. But what if it wasn't enough? What if Ellery managed to talk her way out of it? She was persuasive, connected. The executives trusted her. What if they decided I'd misinterpreted the emails? Or worse, that I'd fabricated evidence to retaliate for a personal grievance? As I walked back to my desk, my phone buzzed with a text from Julian. How did it go? I started to type a response when Ellery appeared beside me. I need you in my office, now. Her voice was ice. My heart hammered as I followed her. Had someone already warned her? Had I miscalculated? She closed the door behind us. I just got a call from the board secretary. There's an emergency meeting tomorrow morning that I'm required to attend. Do you know anything about this? I kept my face neutral. No? Why would I? Because you've been acting strangely since you returned. Because you disappeared into legal for over an hour today. I had questions about the Northvale contract terms, I said calmly. She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. If you've done something stupid, Autumn, I promise you'll regret it. You have no idea who you're dealing with. For a moment, fear gripped me. Then I remembered the emails, the evidence, the clear pattern of misconduct. I guess we'll both find out tomorrow, I replied, meeting her gaze. Her eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. Get out of my office. I turned to leave, my hand on the doorknob when she spoke again. You know, it's probably for the best. What happened with your pregnancy? Her voice was soft, almost sympathetic. Some people aren't cut out to balance family and career. The weak ones always crumble under pressure. The words hung in the air between us. Something inside me, whatever last thread of professional restraint I'd been clinging to, snapped. I turned back to face her. You don't know the first thing about strength, Ellery. You've spent your entire career sabotaging others because you're not good enough to succeed on merit alone. Her face flushed. Excuse me? You heard me. My voice was calm, steady, dangerous. We'll both be at that meeting tomorrow. Only one of us should be worried about it. I walked out before she could respond, my heart pounding against my ribs. I'd shown my hand too early, but watching the momentary confusion flicker across her face had been worth it. Back at my desk, I texted Julian. Meeting went well. Things happening fast. Tell you tonight. The rest of the day passed in a strange haze. Colleagues stopped by my desk, making small talk, unaware of the storm brewing. I smiled and nodded at the right moments while monitoring Ellery through the glass walls of her office. She was making calls, pacing, her usual confidence visibly shaken. At 5:30, she left without saying goodbye to anyone, unusual for someone who typically made a point of being the last to leave. I waited 15 minutes, then gathered my things and headed home. Julian was waiting with dinner already prepared. Tell me everything, he said, pouring me a glass of water. I recounted the meeting with legal, the board's emergency session, Ellery's confrontation. With each detail, his expression grew more concerned. She knows something's happening, he said. She might try to get ahead of it, spin the narrative. She can try. I pushed my barely touched food around my plate, but the evidence speaks for itself. Julian reached across the table for my hand. What if it's not enough? The question had been haunting me all day. Then I'll find another way. I'm worried about you, he admitted. This isn't like you, Autumn. I'm not the same person I was a week ago. I met his gaze. What happened? It changed something in me. I know. His voice softened. It changed me too. But I don't want this to consume you. It's not about revenge, I insisted. Though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. It's about accountability. About making sure she can't do this to anyone else. Later that night, as Julian slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, replaying every interaction with Ellery since she'd become my manager. The subtle undermining, the stolen ideas, the impossible expectations, all building to that moment in the meeting room when she'd forced me to choose between my health and my job. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text message from a number I didn't recognize. This is Camille. Board meeting moved up to 8 a.m. Please be available in case you're called in. I texted back confirmation and tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't quiet. By 5 a.m., I gave up and slipped out of bed. I showered, dried my hair, and dressed with particular care. A navy blue suit, pearl earrings, minimal makeup, professional, composed, a woman with nothing to hide. Julian woke as I was putting on my shoes. It's early, he murmured, checking the time. Meeting was moved up. I want to be there before Ellery arrives. He propped himself up on one elbow. Call me as soon as it's over? I nodded and leaned down to kiss him. I will. The office was eerily quiet when I arrived at 7:15. Security let me in, and I went straight to my desk, organizing my notes, reviewing the evidence one last time. At 7:40, Warren from legal appeared beside me. Autumn, we'd like you to wait in the small conference room on 4. The board may have questions. I gathered my tablet and followed him to the elevator. Is Ellery here yet? She's been asked to arrive at 8:15. His expression gave nothing away. The small conference room had a view of the parking garage. I sat there, watching, as Ellery's silver car pulled into her reserved space at 8:10. She emerged looking immaculate as always, hair perfect, posture straight, expression confident. She had no idea what was waiting for her. At 8:30, Camille came to get me. "They're ready for you now." The boardroom was intimidating. A long table surrounded by serious faces, most of whom I'd never met in person. At the head sat Regina Walsh, the company CEO. She nodded as I entered. "Miss Taylor, thank you for joining us. Please sit." I took the empty chair at the far end of the table. Ellery sat across from me, her face a careful mask of professional concern. She'd already been in the room for 15 minutes, long enough to start her defense. "Miss Taylor," Regina began, "we've been reviewing the materials you provided to our legal team. We'd like to hear directly from you about how you discovered this information." I spoke clearly, methodically explaining my research process, careful to keep my personal conflict with Ellery as a secondary motivation. I outlined the pattern of behavior, the clients affected, the potential legal exposure for the company. Throughout my explanation, Ellery's expression never changed, but her hands, always so steady, trembled slightly against the polished table. When I finished, Regina turned to her. "Ellery, would you like to respond to these allegations?" Ellery straightened, smoothing her already perfect hair. "First, I want to thank the board for allowing me to address this directly. What you've heard is a misrepresentation of standard client relationship management, presented by an employee with a personal grievance against me." She turned toward me, her voice softening with practiced concern. "Autumn has been through something traumatic. I understand her need to find someone to blame, but these accusations are not only false, they're malicious." She was good, sympathetic but firm, confident without seeming defensive. I watched several board members' expressions shift slightly toward her. "The emails in question," she continued, "were part of an approved competitive intelligence strategy. Every communication was within ethical boundaries for our industry." "That's not true," I interrupted, unable to stop myself. Regina held up her hand. "Miss Taylor, please wait your turn." Ellery smiled slightly before continuing. "Furthermore, I'd like to address the personal matter that seems to be the root of this situation. Autumn never informed me she was pregnant. She left an important client meeting without explanation. Had I known her medical situation, I would have handled things differently." The lie landed with perfect precision. Several board members nodded, their expressions softening toward her. She was winning. "May I respond?" I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. Regina nodded, briefly. I opened my tablet and pulled up a new document, something I hadn't shared with legal yet. 2 points. First, regarding the approved competitive intelligence strategy, here's an email from Kieran Matthews to Ellery, dated July 18th, 8 years ago. "The position is yours once I'm promoted. Just keep the inside information coming. This doesn't sound like approved strategy to me." I slid the tablet toward Regina, who read it with narrowing eyes before passing it to the others. "Second," I continued, "regarding my pregnancy, I have medical records confirming I informed Blair Industrial's health insurance of my pregnancy 8 weeks before the incident. I also have this." I pulled up my phone calendar. A witness, my doctor's appointment scheduler, Vivian, who overheard my phone conversation with Ellery from the hospital, where I clearly stated I was pregnant and miscarrying. She was so disturbed by what she heard that she wrote it down, with the time and date. Ellery's composure cracked. That's hearsay. A medical receptionist with no context." "Enough," Regina interrupted. She turned to Warren. "What's our exposure here?" "Significant," he replied. "The competitive bidding information alone constitutes potential antitrust violations. The medical discrimination aspect opens us to substantial liability." Regina nodded grimly. "I think we've heard enough. Miss Taylor, thank you for bringing this to our attention. Would you excuse us for the remainder of this discussion?" I gathered my things and stood. Ellery's eyes followed me, burning with silent fury as I walked out. I returned to the small conference room and waited. 1 hour stretched into 2. My phone buzzed repeatedly with texts from Julian, but I couldn't bring myself to respond yet, not until I knew the outcome. At 11:17, the door opened. Warren entered, his expression solemn. "The board has reached a decision. Ellery's employment has been terminated, effective immediately. She's being escorted from the building now." Relief washed over me, quickly followed by uncertainty. "And what about me?" "Regina would like to speak with you privately." I followed him back to the boardroom. now empty except for Regina. She gestured for me to sit beside her. "What happened to you was unacceptable," she said without preamble, "both personally and professionally. The board extends its sincere apologies." I nodded, not trusting my voice. "We're initiating a full audit of all accounts Ellery managed. The preliminary findings suggest we may have to make significant disclosures to clients and potentially regulatory agencies." "I understand. As for your role," she paused, studying me, "we'd like you to lead the Westland account rebuilding effort, with appropriate compensation adjustments, of course." It should have felt like victory. Instead, I felt hollow. "I need some time," I said quietly, "to think about it." Regina looked surprised but nodded. "Of course. Take the rest of the week. We'll discuss terms when you return." As I left the building, I saw Ellery standing by her car, security hovering nearby as she loaded a box of personal items into her trunk. Our eyes met across the parking lot. I expected anger, threats, something dramatic. Instead, she simply looked small, diminished. I drove home in a daze, the confrontation with Ellery replaying in my mind. The triumph I'd expected to feel hadn't materialized. Instead, I felt empty, a hollow space where grief and rage had lived for days. Julian was waiting at home, pacing our living room. He rushed to me as I walked through the door. "What happened? You weren't answering texts." "She's gone," I said simply. "They fired her." His face broke into a relieved smile. "That's good, right? That's what you wanted." "Was it?" The question lingered as I sank onto our couch. "It feels incomplete." Julian sat beside me. "What do you mean? Getting her fired doesn't feel like enough." I stared at my hands. "She'll find another job, another company to manipulate, more people to hurt." "Autumn." Julian's voice held a note of concern. "I'm not done," I said quietly. The next morning, while Julian was at work, I made 2 calls. The first to Regina. "I've been thinking about your offer," I told her. "I'd like to accept the Westland account leadership position." "Excellent," she replied. "When can you start?" "Monday, but I have one condition." "Which is?" "I want to personally oversee the audit of Ellery's accounts, all of them." A pause. "That's unusual. Warren's team is already handling it." "I understand the patterns better than anyone. I found them in the first place." I kept my voice professional, reasonable, and I think it would help me process what happened. Another pause. "All right, I'll speak with Warren." The second call was to Westland Manufacturing. "This is Autumn Taylor from Blair Industrial. I'd like to schedule a meeting with your procurement team." 2 weeks later, I sat across from Westland's executive team, presenting my findings from the internal audit. The room was silent as I outlined exactly how Ellery's actions had cost them millions in overpayments over 8 years. "We're prepared to offer significant concessions on the new contract," I concluded. "And Blair Industrial will be issuing a formal apology, along with financial restitution." Their CEO leaned forward. "Why are you personally bringing this to us? This could have come from your legal department." "Because I believe in transparency, and because I want you to know that the person responsible has been removed." The meeting ended with a tentative agreement to continue our relationship, contingent on the restitution terms. It was more than anyone at Blair had expected. Similar meetings followed with 3 other major clients. In each case, I personally delivered the findings, the apologies, the offers of restitution. In each case, I salvaged relationships everyone had assumed were lost. Regina was impressed. "You've handled this masterfully," she told me during our monthly review. "The damage could have been much worse." What she didn't know was that I'd been carefully documenting everything, every client meeting, every disclosure, every dollar amount of restitution, building a different kind of case file. 3 months after Ellery's termination, I received a text message from a former colleague. "Ellery got a VP position at Meridian Systems. Thought you should know." I wasn't surprised. Someone with her connections wouldn't stay unemployed long. Meridian was smaller than Blair but growing rapidly. They would have seen her as a valuable acquisition. That evening, I finalized the package I'd been preparing. A detailed report of Ellery's competitive intelligence violations, the client impact statements, the financial restitution Blair had paid, and the regulatory implications. I attached an anonymous note. "Before you announce her appointment publicly." I sent it to Meridian's board of directors, their legal counsel, and 3 industry watchdog organizations. Ellery's job offer was rescinded the next day. 2 weeks later, it happened again. Another company, another offer, another carefully timed disclosure. After the 3rd time, my phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I answered to hear Ellery's voice, tight, with barely controlled fury. "Stop it," she hissed. "Whatever you're doing, stop it now." "I'm not doing anything, Ellery. I'm just ensuring transparency in the marketplace." "You've destroyed my life," her voice cracked. 3 job offers rescinded. My reputation is ruined. I can't even get interviews anymore. "That's strange," I said calmly. "It almost sounds like actions have consequences." "This is about that day, isn't it? The miscarriage?" Her voice turned pleading. I didn't know how serious it was. I was under pressure too. "This isn't about that day. It's about who you are, who you've always been." I paused. "Someone who never faces consequences for the pain they cause." "What do you want from me?" she whispered. "Nothing. Not anymore." I hung up and blocked her number. 6 months later, I was promoted to Vice President of Client Strategy at Blair. The audit of Ellery's accounts had expanded into a company-wide ethics overhaul that I was asked to lead. New policies were implemented, including comprehensive medical leave for pregnancy loss. I never heard from Ellery again, though occasionally I'd see her name in industry forums, offering freelance consulting services at rates far below her previous salary. Her light had dimmed to almost nothing. As for me, I keep her picture in my desk drawer, not out of hatred or even satisfaction, but as a reminder that the world doesn't balance itself. Sometimes, we have to be the correction. Julian and I are trying again for a baby. The doctors are optimistic. But even if it never happens, I've found a different kind of purpose, ensuring that power doesn't shield people from accountability. So that's my story. If it resonated with you, I hope you'll share it with someone who needs to hear that they don't have to accept cruelty as the cost of success. Hit like and subscribe if you want to hear more about navigating toxic workplaces or standing up to seemingly untouchable people. The comments from all of you have been so supportive during this journey, and they remind me why sharing these difficult experiences matters. We never know who needs to hear that they're not alone, or that justice, while slow, is still possible.